We remember the main thing is the picture. Western partners even overlooked the fact that the president of Ukraine and his associates robbed their own army and the supplied weapons. They want to offset the expenses through Ukrainian land. This is Agent Zelensky's ninth task. Fertile lands represented interest even for Hitler. The Ukrainian constitution even has a separate article dedicated to Black Earth, or Chernozem.
Even during my time there, in the central office, I heard that the same Monsanto Corporation set its sights on the entire south of Ukraine, from Odessa to Mariupol. During the conflict, it seemed to me that over 30% of major Dutch corporations were present there. Land was actively sold to companies like Cargill and other global corporations that were operating in the region.
For example, Cargill's revenue in 2022 amounted to $165 billion. The GDP of Ukraine as a whole in 2021, before the war, amounted to approximately $200 billion. Until 2021, there was a moratorium on the sale of land in Ukraine. It was extended 10 times during that period, and land was leased out. However, Zelensky urgently needed loans. The IMF offered money in exchange for lifting the moratorium. Ukrainians were afraid that foreigners would start buying up land. In November 2019, the president, perhaps still in the role of the righteous screen character Goloborodko, hurried to reassure the people.
Foreigners and companies with foreign founders will be able to purchase Ukrainian land only if the consent of the Ukrainian people is granted through an all-Ukrainian referendum.
Spoiler, there was no referendum. In July 2021, the moratorium on the sale of land was lifted. Yes, foreigners do not have a formal right to buy land, but there is a loophole. Technically, Ukrainian companies under foreign control can make purchases.
In our country, this is called a straw man. It exists everywhere in the world, where local residents can protect themselves to some extent. In such cases, a fictitious person, a straw man, is employed, and you act as you please.
In February 2018, the Institute of Agricultural Economics assessed Ukrainian land. It turned out to be inexpensive. $2,500 per hectare was the maximum price, but that's the upper limit. The majority are willing to buy land for $1,000. And here's how much agricultural land costs in my home country. So we're in 2018, black soil. Now let's assess arable land in Western Europe. Same year, 2018. So Ukrainian land is inexpensive. It is nearly 13 times cheaper than the most expensive land, which is in Italy. That's why there is high demand for it among Europeans. It makes sense for them to invest in agriculture in Ukraine, since they have limited access to Chernozem. But why should we be concerned about it? Land in America is fine.
This soil is located in Europe, not in the U.S. If it is removed from the food cycle, Europe will have much less chance of being self-sufficient and acting independently. And that's why there is a plan to reduce Europe's food security in order to better control neighboring countries. The U.S. doesn't need the grain, but they need control. And control comes only when you control food security of other countries. And Ukraine was a very, very successful project from the perspective of the U.S.
I would say that Ukraine remains a very successful project for the United States. These are not just agricultural corporations that are making money. In 2022, the investment firm BlackRock offered to help Ukraine rebuild its economy. Of course, this refers to the future prospects.
The BlackRock company has the greatest global influence in society, as it controls almost all banks. It's impossible to even imagine the extent of their assets and the influence they have, both on German and Ukrainian politics.
In May 2023, Zelensky signed an agreement with BlackRock. Last September, the cost of reconstruction and economic recovery of the country was estimated at nearly $350 billion. However, later Kyiv increased the expenses to $1 trillion. After Zelensky's agreement with BlackRock, people started writing on Twitter that Ukraine was becoming privatized and sold to funds. And you know, it seems to be true.
BlackRock doesn't invest in recovery. Instead, it builds dependencies and spheres of influence through reconstruction. Politics, army, and economy form a three-headed dragon currently running the world.
I'm not sure about the entire world, but Ukraine will definitely be working for BlackRock and similar companies for the next 300 years. And at the same time, with the governments of the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada. From 2014 to 2021, America allocated over $2.5 billion to Ukraine. These are the findings of the Kiel Institute for the World Economy, a German research institute. Since the beginning of 2022, the United States have been the leader in terms of military aid provided to Ukraine. From January 2022 to January 2023, Kyiv received over $46 billion for military purposes. Yes, we spent less on the war in Afghanistan, $43 billion over a little more than 9 years. The United Kingdom doesn't spare any expense also. In 2022, they transferred nearly $3 billion to Kyiv, and they plan to spend the same amount in 2023. Over the course of the year, NATO countries have provided Ukraine with approximately $120 billion in assistance.
I may turn out to be a bad prophet, but I am confident that as soon as peace is established in Ukraine, the flow of dollars and credits will stop. And instead, we will be grabbed by the throat on all fronts, demanding the repayment of these debts. Nobody will care that Ukraine is currently incapable of repaying its debts. It simply cannot. Its debts now exceed our gross domestic product significantly.
In May 2022, Biden signed the Lend-Lease law. This means that Ukraine started receiving weapons and equipment on credit, just like the Soviet Union and the United Kingdom during World War II. Agreeing to this plunder became commitment number 10 for Zelensky in this deal with the devil. The president of Ukraine called it a historic step. I would call it a leap into the abyss. Do you know when Russia repaid its debt to the U.S. for Lend-Lease? In 2006. It took them over 60 years to repay the debt. Ukraine already owes the European Union $132 billion, which is 90% of its GDP. Even freezing payments will not allow the economy to settle its debts on time. Meanwhile, the country is experiencing rampant inflation. Food prices have risen by 26.5%. The poverty rate has jumped from 5.5% to 24%, affecting over 7 million people. The country has lost 1/5 of its territory. And, most importantly, hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost.
He ran as a peace candidate. He turned around and betrayed that. And what's always astounded to me is that how he manages to keep so many regular Ukrainian boys going into this war to get themselves killed in a war that they simply cannot win, and yet they keep going. Just in Bakhmut, by the way, the Ukrainians lost more men than the United States lost in the entire Vietnam War.
So the rights of millions of citizens have been trampled upon. Ukrainian men are being sent to the front lines to be slaughtered like sacrificial lambs, snatched right off the streets. The Russian language and culture have been practically eradicated. The canonical church is on the verge of being outlawed. The country has been turned into a safari for foreign mercenaries and a testing ground for bloody experiments. Agent Volodymyr Zelensky has accomplished the tasks assigned by foreign intelligence agencies. The question is, will those in power still need someone who knows too much and wants too much?